Welcome to another Osceola video chat. Today we are joined by Florida State basketball coach Leonard Hamilton. Coach, joining us from your office at the house. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine, just working harder now, seem like, than I did when I was in the office. I don't have the luxury of walking down the hall and seeing CY and Stan and Steve or Renee and Adam. So what I'm doing now is just blowing their phones up and they're blowing my phones up. And half the time we can't get through to each other because we're all on the phone working, trying to make up for not being in the office. We have 3 scholarships that we still gonna fill for the upcoming season. We have recruits that we need to be trying to think about signing in November, and you're handicapped tremendously by not being able to go on the road in homes and visit with people, not able to bring kids into your campus on visits. So we had a kind of somewhat of a disadvantage. And the fact that we don't have the opportunity to go out in April and evaluate and make decisions on who we want to recruit when we go out in November. Normally in July is a little bit of a problem. Now we don't even know if we're going to be able to go out in July and evaluate it all. So it's putting a lot of stress on us, but now we have to make decisions and without sometimes having the luxury of evaluating as thoroughly as we would like. So we probably gonna have to make decisions on what we've already evaluated, and then for the upcoming season and for the season in the fall. So it's a little stress on our coaches right now trying to put all this together.
These are challenging times for all of us, but we've found some solutions. I think that, like you said, we're keeping connected, through our phones and laptops and such.
Well, for us, we have several players that are still in town.
Yeah.
And we have players who have gone home. And so obviously we have to stay connected with them to make sure that they're practicing safe habits. And number one, completing that, staying on top of their academics, and then trying to find some way to maintain some level of conditioning and skill development while they have limited places to go work out, limited things that they can normally, what they become accustomed to using. So it's a little challenging for us. And then obviously just taking care of our family and us practicing proper recommendations ourselves. It's kind of, I went out walking the other day. I felt so good by just outside walking. I said, man, this is good. I have not been accustomed to doing very much of that. And so, but we've been watching film of last year, trying to make sure that we evaluated the pluses and the minuses of last season, see what some of the things we can improve on, evaluate the games that we played well in, evaluating the games where we played bad in, trying to stay connected with our players. So this is a challenging time. It's different, but I feel like we'll adjust.
Well, you kind of brought up my first question was going to be, players I think are used to online learning, taking classes online, but maybe beyond that, talk about nutrition and conditioning. What kind of things can you encourage them to do? What kind of things has your strength and conditioning staff suggested to those guys?
Well, Coach Bradley is staying in touch with all those guys from a conditioning standpoint, and we trust his judgment. He's been with us over 20 years, so he's done an unbelievable, just a fantastic job. And we're gonna make some progress in some areas, and some areas are not gonna be very good. For instance, we have stay-at-home rules. There are some places you can't go out at all, so you're gonna be limited as to what you can do physically. Do you have the weights? Do you have a treadmill? Do you have access to a driveway basketball court? Where you gonna find a gym where you're the only one in the gym by yourself, where you have limited access? It's just a moving target, and we just got to figure out the best ways and why we stand on top of ourselves academically.
Well, that's very good. Coach, I want to take us way back here. I was thinking back to March 2002 when you were hired at Florida State. And I'm not sure I've ever really asked you, recently, but when this Florida State job came open, and Dave Hart was starting a search and looking at candidates. What did you know about this job, and what kind of intrigued you about the potential for this program?
Well, to be very honest with you, I took a year off, and just about every job in the country that came open, someone was trying to find out whether or not what level of interest I would have in the job. And there were several jobs that opened during that period of time, but I was extremely selective as to where I wanted to go. Well, when the Florida State job opened up, initially, I didn't, the fact that it was in the state and in the ACC, I found somewhat appealing. But I remember one of my former coaches, Scott Howard, came back to me from he was scouting for the Washington Wizards at the time. And he said, "You might need to take a look at Florida State." I said, "Why?" He made a comment to me that I thought that Florida State has really, really made a commitment to wanting basketball to be at the highest level. And he brought me back a drawing of what the basketball practice facility would be like. And that's all I needed to hear the word commitment. Now, ironically, I wasn't going to call about the job, but ironically, for whatever reason, it seemed like I had an interest in Florida State, but Florida State had an interest in me. And several people who I've known over the years, I think it might have been Mike Tranghese, it might have been maybe Dick Vitale or some other guys who I've had relationships with, had called me and asked me of my level, would I be interested in the job? And I thought, but the fact that I had been in Florida, understood the state, the fact that they were in the ACC, I grew up in North Carolina, and I knew the footprint very well, and basically had recruited out of the same footprint. I thought that we probably could be a good match for each other. And fortunate for me that Dave and I had a conversation. I met him in a secluded place, and we had a conversation. And I wasn't really sure how the conversation went, but on a humorous note, my daughter had decided she wanted to come to Florida State and had been accepted. And I remember when Dave Hart called me that Sunday night, and I walked in and I told my family, my daughter and my wife, I just accepted the job at Florida State. My daughter said, "What?" She said, I thought I was getting away from home. That was a very interesting expression she had on her face. But it worked out pretty good for both of us. I think she enjoyed us being here in Tallahassee, and she graduated from Tallahassee and has moved on with her career. But I thought that was very interesting anecdote to the story. But I felt Florida State had a great brand, a great reputation on a national basis. And the mere fact that Florida State and Miami, I thought, had a healthy rivalry. I thought Coach Bowden handled the rivalry with such class, and he was always making strong, positive comments about the relationship he had with the University of Miami. And even though it was a rivalry, I didn't feel that it was a bitter rivalry. You know what I mean? It was, and that was never part of the that came into the picture. And I just had all great thoughts and memories and of Florida State, and the fact that it was in the ACC really excited me. And I'm so happy, and I feel privileged and honored to have had the opportunity to coach here for the number of years that I have, and even more motivated now because I'm part of the unconquered spirit. I'm bleeding garnet and gold. You know, I want very much for our basketball program, you know, to enjoy the level of success that the majority of the ACC has enjoyed over the years. I always tell people that there's such rich traditional, successful rich tradition in the ACC from a basketball standpoint that it's going to be very challenging for Florida State to ever catch up with those 75 or 80 successful rich traditions that existed before we ever joined the league. When Florida State was an independent, they were in the Dixie Basketball League, then the Metro, then the other schools were in the ACC, the Big East, and even Notre Dame, who had their own path of success. And just about all the teams have basically been to the Final Four. When I think about it, Syracuse, Notre Dame, Louisville, Virginia, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, North Carolina Duke, North Carolina State, they've all been to the Final Four. And the other schools have probably been to the Sweet 16. And so there's only a few of us, Boston College, Miami, Florida State, maybe Clemson, that I can think of off the top of my head that have not been to the Final Four. So you're always motivated by the challenge of wanting to carve out your niche. And as a staff and as a team, we have decided that the blue blood, becoming a blue blood, might be out of reach with us in terms of tradition. That's why we've coined our phrase, we the new blood. You know, we gonna carve out our own distinction. We're gonna carve out our own path of success. And we can't do anything about the 80 years that we missed, but we can do something about the moving forward and carving out our own niche. And we're motivated by that. And I think our team, the last maybe 4 or 5 years, have been knocking on the door, you know, right there. But we knocking on the door, but we know the door hasn't opened for us to be in the Final Four to compete for a title. So this past season, I thought was motivated tremendously because of that bitter taste we had in our mouth from the year before when Phil had the unfortunate loss of his father. He injured his foot, couldn't play in the NCAA tournament. David Nichols, who transferred to Florida State from Albany, graduated in 3 years, was a graduate student because his desire to want to participate in the NCAA tournament. And so for those two guys, I felt so bad because that was Phil's last year, and David came to here motivated by the fact he wanted to participate in the NCAA tournament. And so this year's team came back driven, motivated, this excited about wanting to make up and remove that bitter taste in our mouth. And so that's why this team will probably be remembered as, from a coaching standpoint, as the team with the greatest chemistry, the team that it showed what culture means to the success of a team. And the attitude, the will, the unselfish spirit, the togetherness, the willingness to share the ball, to share playing time, to share recognition, that was at a all-time high level. So at the beginning of the season, we wanted to come up with a phrase that we could always use, and they said it's our turn. Our guys, every day, we walked out of the locker room, we had to touch the sign that said our turn. And they were motivated by that. And that's a special unit of guys that believe that we win games by committee and that we were 18 strong. They believe that. The 18th player had the voice as much as the number one player, and that the number one player and the 18th player, that always was a moving target because we had 9 or 10 players lead us in scoring. And the green team, the Vipers, they had as much input to what was going on our team as whoever the number one player was on our team, and that was a moving target.
Coach, I'm sure it took some time, but you had to find your way to make peace with there not being an NCAA postseason. How did you make peace, and maybe not knowing that this team will never quite know how far of a run they could have made? They could have been a Final Four potentially this year.
I'm a bottom line guy, and I've had a lot of challenges in my life, and I've had to approach them with a matured attitude. I don't really get excited one way or the other. when we're having success, and I don't get overly discouraged when things are not going well for us. I think you see I'm a pretty even keel guy. I think the more stressful the moments are, the more focused I can become. I was disappointed along with our players, no doubt about that. But for me personally, as the leader of our program, we turned our attention to how we're going to be better for the upcoming year. And immediately, we got back, and the coaching staff, we started evaluating films of the season, making sure that we understand the pluses, the minuses. How can we improve on those minuses? How can we be a better team? We immediately started turning our attitudes toward the chemistry, the academics of our team, making sure everybody is safe and everything is going the right way, making sure that those who are graduating are moving on with opportunities for their career, the kids who decide to leave early, that they're getting the best advice, that we're giving them the best help we possibly can to try to help them realize their dreams. We're working very hard, trying to fill the 3 scholarships we have for the upcoming season. Even though can't bring kids in and can't go on the road, we are trying to now make sure we're using the right approach, as we've lost our April, where we could not go out and evaluate guys for the signing period in November. We got to be creative as to how we evaluate and how we approach that, because we feel like we have another a potential to have another good team. We're going to lose some players, some guys are going to graduate, and we got to make sure that we find ways to get better every year. In our league, we don't have the luxury. The thing that I'm most fortunate in here as a head coach, I have the greatest staff on planet Earth. Stan Jones been with me close to 25 years now. Mike Bradley, my weight training conditioning coach, been with me over 20. CY, Charlton Young, I recruited him out of high school, and he's been with me now 7. And we got a great addition to our staff in Steve Smith, who knows the footprint of the ACC and has already been in our league. Obviously, everybody knows Chuck, Renee, our office assistant, Adam, and both of the Adams who are video guys, and Jared, who just come back, was a graduate assistant in our program. I'm surrounded with quality people who have a commitment. They are Seminoles in their heart. We all bleed garnet and gold. And all we want is for us to continue to keep working to carve out our little niche, carve out our rightful place, and quit worrying about being a blue blood, and understand that we got to put a category up there, new bloods, and we got to define what those categories mean, so that when people join our club, so now we got maybe Miami and Boston College can come over and be a part of the new bloods. So they got to come up to our standard, but at least to try to keep this thing moving in the right direction. And I'm excited.
Coach, it was exciting to see the fan support this year. I know you guys commented on that a number of times, but sitting in the arena and hearing, listening, watching as games were unfolding in the second half, the roar of that crowd was intense. Can you just articulate what that meant to you guys, for everything that you've built with this program, to see that embrace from the fans? It was 5 straight sellouts, culminating with that ACC regular season championship when you guys beat Boston College.
Well, there's no doubt that I feel some kind of sense of pride and emotions, because I know how hard everybody's worked to get our program to this point. We had a 4-year run early on that I thought that we missed the opportunity. We had similar crowds and excitement, but we had even though we were winning 20 games a year, we came up short in terms of going for 3 or 4 years. Now, to see us back in this place again, we don't ever want to let this go again. I can't say enough about the student body. There's no doubt that they have embrace this team, and they're part of the reason why we're successful. I've always, though, from a selfish personal standpoint, wanted the community to be more part of who we were and on this journey. And so for the community to embrace us and support us and feel that and give us the impression that we belong to them, it is very special to me. I've been uniquely blessed as a basketball coach. I can't tell you how fortunate I have been in my career, from Austin Peay to Kentucky to Oklahoma State. Those places really kind of helped shape my personal feelings. Being in Kentucky, there for 12 years, and ticket hadn't gone unsold in 50 years prior to me there. It's just a great atmosphere. Oklahoma State was basically the same. Miami was a unique program that was being built. But Florida State has the potential, in my mind, to be the number one basketball program in the ACC. That's our goal. And if you don't want to be number one, then you don't need to be a part of who we are right now. We think we can be at that point. And the fan support is part of the identity of any program. And now that we seem to have captivated the imagination of our fans, we don't want to lose that. And that's why, as a staff, and I say I got the greatest staff on planet Earth. We have turned it up a notch. You know, we want very much to show our appreciation for the support that we have gotten. We want to be better next year. We want to be better and better every year. We see no reason why we can't stay number one in this position, which is hard. You know, now that doesn't necessarily mean that we feel a failure if we don't, but we've won the ACC title. We won the tournament. We've been the top 3 or 4 program here in our league, but it doesn't validate you very much in the ACC when you're 3rd or 4th. You know, that doesn't really mean a whole lot, because that's where the basketball world expects everybody to be, behind Duke and Carolina. Now that Louisville's in, you know, if you're 3rd or 4th, that's where everybody's supposed to be. So for us to be at the top means that we have carved out our own little niche, but it's extremely difficult to stay there. And part of the atmosphere that we've been able to create with our fans and how emotional they are at the games and their support makes a huge difference. And I tell you what, that's probably one of the more satisfying experiences that I've had, to know that people respect what you're doing. And it really, really gives our players a big boost and a big lift.
Coach, I know you're busy. I want to ask you one more, and I think this might be a fun one for the fans.
Yeah, I got plenty of time today, man. You can ask me. Matter of fact, don't go. Please don't go. Stay with me a little longer.
Well, this is a fun one, I think, maybe for the fans, because a lot of us have turned to YouTube as we're watching old games, highlights. So maybe put on your professor hat and suggest some games that Florida State fans maybe should go back and watch, whether it's this year or in prior years. What are some incredible memories that you think of games, of moments, that you would say, hey, go out there on YouTube and go search for this, because you really want to enjoy these memories?
Well, let's put on. You said coaching hat or fan hat? Which one did you say?
I said professor hat.
Professor hat. Okay. Okay. This will be good. This will be good.
Okay.
Go back and look at how indecisive and unsure of ourselves that we were in our first game at Pittsburgh. We had 6 new guys. As a staff, we're trying to learn how to put it together. Who can we count on? I think, if I remember correctly, Evans was still hurt, I believe. I'm not really sure he even played in the game. So we got a different rotation. We got new guys, Dominique, Malik, Balsa, Evans, guys who had just gotten here Pat Williams, trying to integrate them into who we are, what it's like going on the road, playing your first game, not really sure, being unranked, but no means that nobody respects you, and see how unsure we were. And then look at the difference that going down to Florida in a few days after that loss and how that shook us back to a energy spot, a respect spot, and the emotions, the body language, the intensity that we played with was altogether different. But that's a learning process that we had to go through. And we still were not hitting on all cylinders as we moved into the tournament, the game at home and the tournament down in Panama City. You know, we still were a work in progress. And if I'm a fan, sometimes you forget you don't really understand the journey. Those were two hard-fought games that we played against Tennessee and Purdue. And in a short period of time, we came back home, I believe, and the game was the game in Bloomington on the Monday or Tuesday?
Tuesday at Indiana.
So we come home on a Saturday, try to walk through on Sunday, travel on Monday. We didn't quite have the juice. We didn't quite, we expended a lot of energy in that tournament. And I felt that we went into that Indiana game mentally wanting to give it up, but physically I thought we were a little exhausted. And as I go back and watch that game, I didn't think that we had the same level of our step was half a step slow. You know what I mean? And I just didn't think that when you look at the attitude we played at Florida and the energy we played with against Purdue and Tennessee, we didn't quite have that. And Indiana had about 7 days off, and they were pointing toward that game. They were undefeated. And I thought that game meant to, because they had not been ranked for a long time, had changed coaches, they were in a position where they really, really needed that game against a team that looked like it was going to be ranked, okay? And I thought that they had a little more juice than we did. I really did. And so I think from a teaching standpoint, that was kind of how we got the season started. But I also think that loss shook us a little bit too and made us a little better. So those losses that we took, I thought really, really, really helped us as we moved through and prepared ourselves as we moved through the rest of the season. And I probably would go back and look at that North Carolina game when David Dorcas went off for the number of points that he did. And I thought that was some memories there. The Notre Dame game in the NCAA, I think we the Sweet 16 it was played in Chicago when they were ranked in the top 4 or 5. I think they was ranked fourth or fifth, and we were still trying to carve out our niche, and people still didn't quite know what we were about. And if I remember correctly, Chris Singleton had been injured and had a stress fracture, and he was just coming back healthy and preparing to play. And we are a little more challenging for teams once we get in the NCAA tournament because it's hard to prepare for us on what we do. We play a little different than most people. We pick up full court man-to-man. We overplay a lot. We pressure a lot. We normally have rim protectors back in the back. And so I thought that would be an interesting game because I thought that we came in with a hunger, a purpose that was extremely different than what. And then I think some of the Duke games up there when Michael Snare hit the shot. I think some of the games that we've had with them down here. One of the games that probably was so disappointing to me was the game we lost to Carolina, and I believe the youngster, he was a freshman, hit a jump shot at the top of the key. That was a disappointing game. And I also think another game against Carolina here, we were down like 20-some points. Might have been my first year here, first or second year here. Might have been the first year. I think it was the first year. And we were down big, maybe 18, 19 points, and came back and won the game. You know, those are some games that I think you would kind of see where we were going with our program. The Louisville game here this past season, I thought was a game where you could see significant part of that game. We came back from like being 13 down with only one starter on the floor. That I thought that it was significant that shows the importance of having a quality depth. And the seamless substitution, the seamless interaction with the guys, not being bothered by who you're on the floor with. And I think that shows a lot about the chemistry of our team, because there we were back down and Louisville's playing, but as a team and as a staff, our guys never panicked. And I think you could see the dividends that you receive from playing, having the quality of the depth that you can continue to keep playing with tremendous energy. And when you have, if you look at the box scores where you got guys playing 35, 36 minutes, and our kids playing 27 minutes, I think that you'll see a little bit of different how we are able to come back. The game at Notre Dame, where we only led for 19 seconds of the entire game, you can see how motivated Notre Dame was. For instance, I thought that they felt some kind of way when we won the game down here by 1 point. I think that was the game that the coach was fined because of some comments he made, and I thought that was a game that motivated them. And you can see that they came out the first half, their energy level was off through the roof, but because of the fact that we were able to play hard and play a lot of people, I thought that when we flexed our muscles late in the second half and had to come from behind, I thought we had a little more energy and we were able to make plays. And you would never really fully learn to respect how much Trent Forrest meant to our program. And the shot that he made against Purdue, the ball was always in his hand when the game was on the line. And the fact that he was always able to come through with a steal, deflection, a basket, a free throw. I thought that from an educational standpoint, I want our fans to realize that. And I thought that those were moments that I think sometimes go unnoticed, that we can lose Pat Williams, because I think that was Pat that didn't play again in the Notre Dame game here at home, and that Wyatt Wilkes was able to go into the game and score 19 points and play with such level of confidence that there was no indecision at all on his part. And you can think about the fact that when Evans, who had been injured early in the year, was a lot more confident later on, and he was always instrumental in us winning some of them hard-fought games. How the confidence he would have to go in and make layups. He had a big three in one game, hitting his free throws, and he's a guy who was not playing that many minutes early. Those things, I think, when our fans look at our games, that those things kind of go unnoticed. That and that I would like to bring to the forefront from an educational standpoint. There were a lot of games where 50% of our offense production came off the bench. And those things identify who we are, that sometimes during the excitement of the game, you just know that we won the game, but the method of how we are doing that with the system that we have, I think sometimes is not quite as obvious. That makes sense?
Very good trip down memory lane. I think fans will enjoy that very much. Well, Coach, again, thank you so much for your time. I won't have to tell you to stay positive, 'cause I know you'll stay positive, but please stay safe. All of our best to you and the FSU basketball family. Thank you for your time.
In closing, I'd like to say this. I want our fans to understand that these are very interesting times that we're going through. And I want to encourage whole Seminole Nation and the Tallahassee community, to stay safe and healthy. And do that by following the recommended guidelines that our officials have recommended. Washing your hands consistently, practicing social distance, and staying at home. Try to avoid these things that we're dealing with that are somewhat unknown, and these are different times. Let's don't take any chances. Let's go nose. We want all those people to stay healthy and safe, so that next year we can pack that Tuck Center and you can go help us win us another title. That's what I want to happen. All right, buddy?